So once again, I have some game auteurs for you all. If you've seen my last video, you probably know what I'm talking about, but the long and short of it is that auteur theory is the idea of a movie's driving creative force being one single person. And I was saying this might also apply to games. Maybe, I don't know. Whether or not that's true is up to interpretation, but the fact of the matter is that there is usually more than one person in charge of games, unless it's an independent deal. Hence why, when possible in my last video, I tried to mention other people involved in the game's development. I had some requests from my community to talk about some specific people. Unfortunately, they're all men this time. I'll also provide some trigger warnings and some spoiler warnings, and if you're uncomfortable, feel free to click away, and I'll see you next time. So, you might know Yoko Taro. He only made some extremely popular games. Shockingly though, did you know he did more than just Nier Automata? Wild. Before 2B's perfect ass cheeks were even a spark of an idea, Drakengard, known in Japan as Dragon Dragoon for some reason, was an action RPG for the PS2 made by Kamiya, which was Yoko Taro's former company. You play as a horrible man, Kame, who massacres armies of people in order to destroy the Empire and protect his sister Furie. The usually heroic trait of absolute determination and cutting through swaths of enemies is treated here as horrifying, which it would be in real life if one guy casually cut through armies like it was no big deal. It's always interesting to me when death in video games is treated with appropriate levels of gravity rather than another number for the stats page. Anyway, there are two things I know about original flavor Drakengard. Firstly, it's that the little sister heroine is in love with the hero, her big brother Kame. Instead of it being a weird fetishy thing, he's grossed out by it, so she nopes out of existence and chaos ensues. The second thing is ending E, and this is the one that creates the timeline offshoot into Nier and eventually Nier Automata. The one where the protagonist and his dragon are transported into modern-day Tokyo and are killed by nuclear missiles. Also, humanity at large is decimated by a disease that turns them into salt. Okay, I lied, there was a third thing. We don't talk about the priest steal in the Japanese version. The Drakengard I did play was Drakengard 3, the one with the girl protagonist. Zero is an intoner, which is like a singing goddess type deal. And she is on a journey to kill all of her sisters, who are all conveniently numbered from 1 to 5. You begin with murdering 5 and count backwards. And you commit a lot of sororicide and also stealing their number one disciples slash sex partners slash maybe romantic partners? Question mark for your own? You can then bring the stolen disciples into battle with you. In the story as well, all the intoners power up their special powers via sex with the disciples as well. Except for one of them, she's abstinent and gets treated like a loser version for it. I mean, if you want to abstain, that's your own problem. I'm not here to judge. In fact, I'm not judging. I don't fuck. Also, there's exactly one good intoner amongst the 6 sisters, and things never end well for her. I didn't get very far in Drakengard 3 because I hate grinding, but also I kind of burn out on how dark it was as well. It's an interesting game, and the true final boss and true ending are conceptually interesting if you want to look that up yourself, but the only thing I'll say here is that this is one of like 2 examples that I know of the final boss of a game being the protagonist themselves. It's an interesting story choice. I can see why not many games do it, but it's always interesting when a game actually does it. The original Nier games came in 2 versions, Gestalt and Replicant. Replicant was the Japan-only version with for the PS3 with a younger main character called Brother Nier by the fandom, and Gestalt was the international version with an older main character called Father Nier. Both versions have been released for all audiences now, but this is just how it was in the beginning. I think Replicant is now the most accessible version because that's the one on current gen consoles. So if you're into DILFs, you're out of luck. The reason for the different versions with different protagonists was due to the different feedback from various regions. The reason why international audiences got Daddy Nier was apparently because American audiences preferred the big buff dude, even though Europeans preferred Brother Nier. I'm European audiences. The original Niers are also notable for having an intersex character in Kaine. This kind of representation is commendable as it's quite rare. I don't feel like it's up to me to comment on the quality of the representation as I'm not part of the group. So I'll just sort of metaphorically draw around it in highlighter and go, nice. Nier Automata was made by Square Enix and Platinum Games, more on them later, and is about a robot girl with really nice legs who completes missions for her organization of androids, who should really be gynoids because andro is masculine and gyno is feminine, but whatever, as they participate in a forever war against machine life forms for largely unknown reasons other than it was what we were ordered to do. It takes place so far in the future from Gestalt, Replicant, and the Drakengard series that knowing them beforehand isn't required viewing, but if you know about them you'll understand some references. It's a very pensive game. A friend of mine wasn't keen on it because they found the juxtaposition of the female characters' designs and the existential dialogue and emotional sequences distracting. I'm paraphrasing, but I think our words were along the line of the game says cry, the visuals say boner. And then I have a different friend who feels the opposite and called Yoko Taro a genius for basically all of Yoko Taro's games are a subtle criticism of the games industry at large. I can see both points. Ever since the original Drakengard, it was a big theme of pretty much all of his works that mindless killing is actually quite horrifying. This point probably could have been made without the sexualized designs, but that also doesn't invalidate the points being made. I mean, if having a somewhat sexual design invalidated all of your good points, then why the hell are you watching me? To further the existentialism, To Be was named for the to be or not to be speech from Hamlet, where he contemplates death. The companion, Pod 42, was named for the answer to life, the universe, and everything from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And A2 was named for Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, namely the line Et tu, Brute, when Caesar gets betrayed and killed by Brutus. Several of the machine life forms are named for philosophers, one of whose names I probably shouldn't try to pronounce, and I'm definitely not baiting myself in my own script to try and attempt while recording. Oh god. Brings my microphone closer. Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard? I'm mean. I'm mean to myself. I'm mean to myself for no reason. I don't trust scripting Pink anymore. Kierkegaard. Oh. Thank you, Google. The big through line of the Drakengards and the Niers, with the exception of Drakengard 2, as Yoko Taro wasn't actually the director for that one, is that, killing a nameless, faceless other for the sake of your own goals isn't very heroic, actually. It's all an introspective commentary on video games and their stories. In the Japanese version of Nier, a lot of the character names and world-building terms, references to standard RPG archetypes, as everything there is a bit more standardized, because different translators translate things differently. Like, Mao, or the Demon King, became the Shadow Lord, and Mamono, or monsters, became shades. There are probably more, but those are the examples I'm giving. So, Yoko Taro wants you to think about the horrors of killing everything in your path to reach your goal, but also please send him the zip file of 2B's butt. Hey, it's that guy from Platinum Games. He made a whole lot of games people liked. He's also an asshole. So this guy has made so many games, namely Beautiful Joe, the Bayonetta trilogy, Okami, and The Wonderful 101. He's also helped make many more games with Platinum, such as Nier Automata and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and he leaves a clear trace of where he's had a hand in the game's design, which I suppose is the whole thesis behind these videos. However, while each game is clearly his, there's also enough mechanical differences to keep people interested, like Bayonetta's absurd and raunchy style, Okami's wolf, and the Wonderful 101's drawing on the Wii U gamepad to switch attack styles. I can appreciate that he doesn't just keep making the same game over and over again. One thing about Bayonetta, she was actually designed by a woman. Mari Shimazaki seems like a cool lady and actually designed the Fido line and 2 of the professors in Scarlet Violet for Pokemon as well. I like her art style. Cool beans. While I have been known to enjoy his games from time to time, there's absolutely no way he'd get away with how he acts on Twitter if he wasn't a man. He has so much goodwill from making so many beloved games that being a dick to his fanbase is funny and charming and not rude. If I was mean and rude to people for no reason, I'd either have no friends or I'd get a bunch of weirdos in my DMs. I mean, have you seen my tits? So, Peter Molyneux. I bet you haven't heard this name in a while. Peter Molyneux was the head of Lionhead Studios before its closure, and the series he's most known for are Fable and Black and White. He had some very grandiose ideas, but his hype was bigger than his bark. The first Black and White game was the very first Let's Play I ever watched, as a wee babby. It's a game where you can literally play God. I say can like it's an option, but it's your only option. God is a disembodied floating hand that has to rule over tribes within the game world. You cast miracles and use your creature, which is a giant creature that you can order to do stuff on your behalf. The game world changes depending on whether or not you're a good god, which seems to be a constant thing of Peter Molyneux's for good or for ill. I did actually play the sequel, and I'm fairly certain I still have the CD-ROM somewhere, but, like, it was okay. Basically Age of Empires with more of a story. She says, having not played Age of Empires since I was, like, the second one. Gives away my age. Now, the Fable games that are definitely significantly more popular. The Fable series! They were high fantasy games with a very Monty Python style of comedy. And the first horror sequence in a game that genuinely terrified a poor young pig. If you're from the UK or a weirdo who's familiar with the culture, you probably recognize a significant amount of the cast as well. In the first game, you were a kid, retroactively called the hero of Oakvale, whose hometown is raided and destroyed by bandits, his father killed, and his mother and sister go missing. A man called Maze from the Heroes Guild saves the young boy, sorry, he could only be a boy, and raises him to be a hero. It was the first game in this series, so it was definitely odd in some ways. As you go through the game, you look older and older and turn into an old man, while everyone around you stays more or less the same. When you meet characters that you haven't seen since childhood, you can be even older than them. Like your sister still looks like a kid. So while visibly aging was a cool idea in theory, in practice it's weird because no one else ages at the same rate as you. While Fable 1 set the scene, Fable 2 is where the series hit its stride. For one thing, you can actually choose your gender in this game. Yay! For two things, you have a dog. I love the dog. I love the dog forever. Fable 2 was actually my first Fable game, and I loved the shit out of it. I loved having my choices affect the world around me. I love hearing Stephen Fry as Reaver, though now I'm like, I love the combat, and I love the story as well. You begin the game as an orphan on the streets of Bowerstone with your sister Rose. The children buy a magical music box and use it to wish for a life in the castle. They're brought before the castle's owner, Lucian Fairfax, who proceeds to shoot and kill Rose, and then shoots the player out the window, believing one of them to be the hero fated to stand in his way. Unfortunately for him, he didn't check the player's body, and they grow up to become the prophesied hero. My favourite anecdote about my playthrough, from when I was like, was that I chose the ending where you got an enormous pile of cash and literally everyone in the world hated me for it, but I managed to regain their favor by being really, really sexy. I'm not even kidding. You can take that as a point against the game, but mostly I just find that really funny. One of the more interesting plot points I remember from the game was that there's a decade time skip during the course of a quest. It's quite unusual for a game like this, but aside from the character models being altered slightly, there isn't really much of a difference in the world in the interim. I also played Fable 3. It's certainly a thing. I didn't hate it outright, but it didn't really upgrade all that much, and even downgraded some other things, I think. It's been a bit. It had a lot more celebrities than the other two games. And this was the game that scared the crap out of me. Twice! In Fable 3, you play as a prince or a princess who is actually the daughter of the previous game's hero. You begin with a lover, either Elise or Elliot, depending on your gender, with whom you spy on the current king's, your older brother Logan's, meeting. He then catches you and forces you to choose between killing your lover or a group of protesters. You're cast out of the castle with your faithful butler and your tutor who loves to yell about balls, and have to go around the country gathering supporters to help you dethrone your brother the tyrant. You also get to choose whether or not to execute him. Fun! But then comes the fun plot twist. Your brother was forced to enact these horrible policies in order to gather money to stop the Crawler, a big Cthulhu-looking fucker that attacked a different country and is now on its way to attack Albion for no perceivable rhyme or reason. The easiest way to fill your coffers is to be evil, but that means letting down the people who helped you to overthrow your brother. But if you don't let them down, you won't have enough money, or worse, you'll be in the negatives. The main effect from this is seen only after the final battle. Depending on what you do, you'll either be living in a country of corpses, or everyone in the world is alive and hates you. Nanny the fuck? You can also either play the shit out of the money-making minigames or invest in real estate, breaking the moral of the game over your royal knee. Also, the big issue. The pause menu is diegetic. It's a space called the Sanctuary that the player can physically walk around in, and a few early game cutscenes take place there. Absolutely no one liked this. Sometimes game developers have ideas that sound neat on paper, but actually kind of suck. This was one of them. Maybe I'll do a video on these someday. Who knows? Yes, I do have another thing in mind when I talk about the ideas that sound neat on paper but actually kind of suck. And yes, I am talking about the original Hyperdimension Neptunia. One of the big things that Molyneux hyped to hell and back was Project Milo. It was an AI, not the bad art-stealing kind, child that you could interact with via the Kinect. It was going to be an amazing and revolutionary product. You could teach this child words and make all of his decisions for him, and teach him how to skip stones, apparently. But then apparently Molyneux had difficulty getting Microsoft to see it as a full game and not a tech demo. And then later some of the technology was utilized in Fable the Journey, the Fable Connect game that not many people played, where you could be nice to your horse. My guy's gained a reputation as a liar, and I said myself that his hype is bigger than his bark, but I don't think he lies outright. It's just that he can't keep his mouth shut in the early stages of development, so some of the features he talked about would get scrapped before they made it into the final product. That or his ideas were too grandiose to be adequately utilized. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us would love to make the big groundbreaking game that flips the industry on its head, but it'd just be nice to have something enjoyable. Or is that too much to ask? Conclusion. What is it with these famous game-making men and being massive objectifying perverts? I was gonna add Suda51 and Swery65 to this video as well, the number man, but then I realized that I don't actually know very much about either of them, and I'd like to get this video out sooner than later, so I guess I'll see if I can play the No More Heroes and the Deadly Premonitions to get some opinions on those. Perhaps. Anyway, thank you for watching. I got 1k views on my last video, so I'm like, holy shit, poggers. Anyway, please subscribe if you haven't already. And, I don't know. If you like my video, give it a thumbs up, comment, make it more sexy to the algorithm. And come watch my streams as well. I'm at Symphonic Pink on Twitch. And, yeah. Bye, bitch.